Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the AfA for Animals Coalition's third series of AfA Connect. It's great to see you all here today. On behalf of AfA and our members, thank you all for joining us. My name is Ursula, and I am the events coordinator under the AfA Coalition. As we begin, let's take a moment to cover some important housekeeping matters, and this will only take a few minutes of your time. First and foremost, this event is being live streamed on YouTube and will remain there for people to have the opportunity to watch later. So after this event, the link to the YouTube playlist will be shared via email. Please make sure to switch off your camera and microphone, as some participants may be joining us from areas with limited internet connectivity, so keeping cameras off can improve their live streaming experience. For those joining via Zoom, if you want to enable the auto captions, which is an auto translation feature, click More at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then click on Captions and set your language to the language that you wish to be translated. Please also set your screen name to the name that you registered with so we can check who has been able to join us today. And it's also good for us to know, like, hi, saying hi to you, this and that. Last but not least, if you have any questions, please place them in the chat box in either Zoom, if you are joining us in Zoom, or in YouTube, if you are viewing from there. And this will be collated by our team members, and we will address as many as we can during the sessions. Now, a little bit of introduction of who we are. The AfA for Animals Coalition is not only the largest animal protection network in Asia, but by membership, we are also the largest animal protection network in the world. AfA is composed of 26 core member organizations representing a diverse array of animal protection and advocacy organizations. And there are more than 300 organizations in our network. The team has undergone a dramatic growth in the past few years, and we are now a dedicated team of 18 staff coordinators across 6 countries, all dedicating to help organizations to help animals. At its core, AfA is about uniting voices for the animals of Asia. We also help organizations to collaborate in various ways, for example, in investigations, campaigns, and in reports. We also provide a platform for sharing of resources, knowledge, experience, and we act as a central point for networking and connecting. The movement to help animals is stronger when we are united and when we collaborate. That's what we believe. And by working together, we can be more efficient and have a bigger, better impact. So in order to concentrate on specific areas of interest, AfA organizes 7 working groups. These groups allow our members to collaborate on various aspects of animal advocacy, such as social media, animal cruelty, policy work, capacity in animal protection, and issues facing farm animals, macaques, and sanctuaries and rescue centers.
Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen to do the introduction for the session in the main room. Bear with me 1 second. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today for a session entitled Catching Online Animal Cruelty Perpetrators in the Real World. And this is hosted by the AfA Social Media Animal Cruelty Coalition, or SMAC for short. So just a little bit about SMAC. We are a coalition of 29 member organisations, and we've seen significant growth in the number of organisations joining SMAC, but also this is a reflection on the increasing knowledge of this issue in the public domain and in the need for us to come together to work on tackling this truly global problem. And you'll see some of the fantastic organisations that are members here. So before we get into the presentations today, just a warning that some of the images and topics addressed here can be distressing. We haven't put anything too graphic, but of course, if you need to leave the session at all, then that is absolutely fine. So we have been running a survey since last year, which is literally a few questions about your experience of seeing animal cruelty content online. If you'd like to take part in that, there is the QR code here for you now, or the bit.ly link that you can follow. We will also have this up again in the slides at the break, I believe, if you want to take part. And this will just help us in some research that we're doing. So yeah, it's very short. Hopefully you can do that. I'll just give a second for anybody that might be trying to interact with this. Okay, so let's meet today's speakers. My name is Nicola O'Brien. I am the lead coordinator of SMAC, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by, first of all, Connie Chiang, who is the co-founder and executive director of Taiwan SPCA. Connie was born in Taiwan but grew up in Vancouver, Canada, and after graduating with a communications degree, she moved back to Taiwan and founded the Taiwan SPCA in 2009. Connie is currently the executive director and leads the organization in helping animals by focusing on cruelty investigations, advocacy campaigns, and animal welfare education. And Taiwan SPCA are one of our members of SMAC and have been for a number of years. Our second speaker is Fouke Postma from the Netherlands, and Fouke is an investigator and a trainer at the organisation Bellingcat. Bellingcat is an independent investigative collective of researchers, investigators, and citizen journalists brought together by a passion for open source research. Founded in 2014, they've pioneered the use of open source research methods to investigate a variety of subjects of public interest. Fouke has a background in conflict analysis and has an interest in human rights, security, intelligence, and the illegal wildlife trade. So in today's session, we're going to take you through these four main sections. First of all, I'm going to talk about SMAC's role and how we deal with reports of cruelty content from members of the public, how we work with local NGOs, and to bring this into focus of the bigger picture of what SMAC is trying to achieve. Then we'll pass to Connie for an NGO experience of investigating online perpetrators and the challenges they face, looking at the role of social media platforms and the public. Then we'll move on to Fouke, who's going to give us a really interesting talk about the use of online technology and how this has been used to investigate online perpetrators of wildlife crime and its application to cruelty content. And finally, we're going to have a Q&A section, which will be open to all attendees. So please do post your questions in the chat throughout the session and our team will collate those. Okay, so getting into SMAC's role, investigating online animal cruelty. So first of all, we just want to cover off what is animal cruelty content. So SMAC says this is any content that depicts anything that's been posted on a social media platform by an individual, organization, or business that depicts animal cruelty or suffering for any reason apart from valid campaigning, journalistic, or educational purposes. And this does cover a wide range of types of cruelty, because we don't just look at tackling obvious physical violence towards animals, but also psychological suffering, long-term suffering that animals may endure from being in a situation that is bad for them. And so here we can see some images of just some of the kinds of things that we find on social media. As you can see, there's a wide range of animals being used, wild and domesticated animals. Often we see endangered species, and it also crosses over a whole range of other forms of animal cruelty and suffering. So things like the wildlife trade, animals being used as props in entertainment and performance. To tackle this, SMAC focuses extensively on collecting research and information. We want to maintain a really solid database of this information, and we believe that we do have the most comprehensive database of this type in the world. And we rely heavily on our fantastic group of volunteers who are pretty much daily going online and looking for cruelty content, and often having to witness some really awful content and things happening to animals. But their information is so crucial to all of our work. We also have a public reporting form where members of the public who find cruelty content can also submit it to us. And all of this goes into our database. And this is just a snapshot of the kind of things that you can see on our database. We obviously are looking, we have the links, we're looking for the channels. We also collect screenshots of what's happening in the videos so that we don't have to keep looking at the link. And so we've got a record of that. You can see we have a variety of themes of the types of content, and these are chosen by the volunteers and the public to say what kind of cruelty is happening. And we're also looking at specific abuses. We want to know what animals are involved, and if possible, the countries that are involved as well. So we're collecting a lot of data here. And if we just have a quick look at the information from January 1st this year to just last week, we've had 51,000 reports of cruelty content from social media platforms. And most of these are on 5 main platforms, and you won't be surprised to see the names of some of these, the biggest ones used globally: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, or X as we now know it. And we found 16 total themes of cruelty, with 5 top themes being animals used as entertainers, deliberate physical torture to animals, fake rescue of animals, monkey hatred, and wild animals kept as pets. And if you want more information on these types of themes and some examples of how they manifest online, you can visit our website. We have a definitions page. Haven't got time for that today, but I think this gives a good impression of what's there. I think one of the main things I wanted to show here is that we have 51,000 reports is a great deal. And obviously, we don't check every individual report, but it all feeds into our database. And I just want to quickly go over here some of the many ways in which the data is used. So public awareness is a huge part of what we do. We want to educate the public of how to identify cruelty and what to do when they see it. We also want to use this data is a crucial part of our work, which is engaging with social media platforms themselves to get them to improve their policies and their moderation so that there isn't a literal platform for this content. So the data that we use as evidence when we're talking to the platforms to say, this is what's on your platforms, this is what people are not happy about, it shouldn't be there, they're reporting it to you, they're reporting it to us, let's do something about this. And we can identify cruelty trends as well. We can see what kind of content is popular and what is growing potentially. And in our work with social media platforms, we're also trying to convince them to assist NGOs where they can when looking at things like investigations. And so our support for NGOs, as well as them being part of SMAC, and we work collaboratively on things like lobbying the platforms, on public awareness, they can use our data and have access to our database. And we have worked with a number of NGOs in providing evidence for lobbying for laws that are putting more responsibility on social media platforms to deal with content. And of course, the focus of today's session is about NGO local investigations. And our role here is that we are a conduit that can take information supplied by the public and given to NGOs that may be able to do investigations. So here is the sort of flow that SMAC follows. We receive report from the public. As I mentioned, we get 51,000 in just the last 8 months or so. So we're not looking at every single link that's sent, but sometimes we do get more in-depth reports from members of the public, or there may be links that stand out to us that are relevant. So our first action is to assess the content, because it needs to have the information to be able to be viable for further investigation. So the sorts of things that we're looking at and when we're assessing content are these, and this might be helpful for those that want to look into content further. So is the information easy to understand and digest, first of all? Does it have any detail beyond screenshots or links of the cruelty? Because we really need detail for this to be usable. Does it contain clear evidence on the country or locale of where the content was created? Which of course is so important if we're going to pass this on to an NGO who's in that country. Is there an understanding of the laws in that country and how the cruelty in the content relates to them? Because unfortunately, sometimes there is the position where there isn't a law that outlaws what's happening, even though we know it's cruelty and we know it needs to end. That is a really important tool that needs to be present. Which species are involved? Does the evidence show clear links to the possible perpetrator or creator, which would be the best scenario? And has it been reported to the platforms already, or other local law enforcement or NGOs? And crucially, thinking about that the NGOs need as much information as possible to be able to pursue an investigation. So going back to our flow, that's our assessment. And obviously part of what we do is also look at what could SMAC do. Can we escalate this to a social media platform for removal as an initial thing? Once we decide that, yes, we've got enough information, then comes the role of us identifying NGOs that might be able to take this on as an investigation. And you'll notice that I have said on the assess content and identifying NGO that this may be where the process is blocked. And this isn't to be negative, but it's just to show that at these stages are really crucial in this being able to follow through to an investigation on the ground. Because we've got to identify an NGO in the country. They need to have the relevant laws to be able to tackle the content, but also crucially, they need to have capacity to be able to do an investigation. And it is really frustrating for us and for these NGOs who are working on so many animal issues already, and they need, the reality is, do they have the resources to be able to investigate? If they can, then fantastic, and we happily share that information, and we'll then go into our role of assisting the NGO in any way that we can, which will include talking to the social media platforms if that is appropriate. And one of the issues is that organizations often face is getting information from the platforms that can assist them in their investigation. So I've brought us back to this page because, yes, supporting local investigations with solid reports from the public is a really important action. However, these are all the ways that information is used in the bigger picture of tackling cruelty content. So it does lead to investigations where possible, but there's all these other important ways that we are tackling the problem. So every report really does count. And just to remind everyone of SMAC's 5 steps, you'll see reporting is our final step here, and it is so important. So be aware, do not watch, do not engage, do not share the content, and really importantly, report it to the platforms and report it to SMAC. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to pass this over to Connie when I can see how to stop sharing my screen. Honey, it's over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Nicola, are you going to help me share my presentation? Yes.
Arcilla's doing that, so yeah.
Thank you everyone for attending this session. I'm happy to be here to speak with you. Next slide, please. I'm going to start my presentation by giving you a little bit of a background information. So at the Taiwan SPCA, one of the work that we do is we conduct cruelty investigations and welfare inspections. So on average, we receive about 600 to 700 cases of reports each year, and this is all from members of the public. And mainly this involves the improper rearing of animals, cases involving direct physical harm, for example, beating animals, causing injuries. So out of the cases reported to us, and these are numbers from 2019, was only about 6%. And we also receive a variety of other complaints, such as illegal pet abandonment, the use of traps, illegal puppy mills, etc. Next slide. And a brief explanation of Taiwan's Animal Protection Act. So there are 3 situations where there would be considered a criminal offense. So in Article 25, for example, if someone deliberately kills or harms an animal causing severe physical harm or death, would be considered a criminal offense. Article 25-1, if multiple animals are killed using poison or firearm. And 27-1, the dissemination of media content that shows the abuse or killing of animals. So in these 3 situations, and for certain online content, the district prosecutor's office does and should get involved. So next slide. So when we see online animal cruelty, I'm sure many of you perhaps are wondering, well, what can be done? Some action can be taken. So first, with social media, the platforms all obviously, they have a role in this. And also members of the public also have a role in combating this problem. Next. So first with social media, okay, what I believe is what they should be doing and doing so actively is 1, to remove the content and page, number 2, to ban the user, and 3, to aid law enforcement. But in reality, it is not always the case here in Taiwan. Although many of the biggest platforms do have some policies related to harm against animals, however, they largely focus on direct physical abuse. And this also has to be clearly visible in the video. So this means that an animal showing injuries or fear responses or in poor conditions may not always fall into this category. And also, animal cruelty is usually not clearly defined in these policies. So many content, they're not flagged or taken seriously by these platforms. And furthermore, social media giant Meta, who owns Facebook, Instagram, at least in Taiwan, we know that they do not work with law enforcement. So even if the police or animal protection authorities ask them to provide user information, they will usually not cooperate. And this is because Meta only provides information to law enforcement, including involving 9 types of crime. So this does not include animal cruelty. So other crimes like homicide, kidnapping, larceny, fraud, etc., would be covered, but not animal cruelty. So really the problem here in Taiwan is with Meta and I think around the world as well, because other social media platforms tend to cooperate more with the police. And here we receive reports of online cruelty involving a variety of situations, for example, dog eating, dogs locked in a car, abuse of macaques, keeping wild animals as pets. And with these online cases, it's often very hard to find the perpetrators just by viewing a video or photo. Next. So what we're trying to do here is that we are trying to push through legislation that will make it mandatory for media platforms to work with law enforcement when it comes to animal abuse content, and also to make it their responsibility to take down the content instead of what they're doing now is relying on public reports. And recently, we were able to convince a legislator of the KMT party to propose an amendment to Article 27-1 of our Animal Protection Act. So the language is shown on the screen. So we're hoping that this will allow relevant authorities to require content creators, platform providers, and online service providers to remove illegal content and keep all relevant information to be provided to authorities when asked. And this comes with a penalty as well. So this legislator actually held a public hearing actually just last week regarding her proposed amendments. And actually at the hearing, discussions on this amendment was not raised at the hearing, which is actually a good thing. Which this means that basically nobody is against it, nobody has any further questions. Next. And also, our Ministry of Agriculture actually had a meeting with stakeholders and animal protection NGOs back in April of this year to discuss their own amendments to the Animal Protection Act. And at the meeting, I actually did raise the issue of online cruelty against animals and suggested the need for platform companies to have more responsibility in terms of the law. And good news is last week as well, I got word from the ministry that they have added in an amendment regarding this in their own revisions to the APA. And this is really exciting because if the Ministry of Agriculture agrees to this and have their own revisions, this will probably pass in committee. And so hopefully during the next committee hearing that this will be discussed, and we're hoping by the end of this year. And finally, of course, when lobbying, it's also important to achieve bipartisan support. So we also visited another political party and told them about the growing issue of online animal cruelty. And they were all very shocked to hear this. So I believe they may also propose their own amendment as well. Next. So going on to the role of the public. So Nicola has mentioned SMAC's 5-step process. So I'm not going to go over this in detail, but I think just to emphasize maybe on the be aware part of this, there's a lot of information on SMAC's website, which is very, very helpful, very useful. And I think the more members of the public understand and learn about different animal issues, I think it's easier for people to be able to spot cruelty online, because sometimes the cruelty is not so obvious. For example, we may see like a slow loris being tickled, but if we're aware, we will know that this is not they're reacting in an unnatural way. Or monkeys dressed in clothing, some people may think that it's cute or it's natural, but to us it's not. There's a lot of suffering that goes on behind the scenes. So being aware is very, very important. Next. And also, we think it's very important for groups in different countries to try to catch these people, these perpetrators. But there are challenges. And one of the biggest challenges facing social media regulation is jurisdiction. So some forms of animal cruelty or exploitation may be legal in some countries, but then illegal in another. And also some severe forms of animal cruelty videos are often shared in private groups, which is even harder to infiltrate these groups, but it's not impossible, but it's just very difficult. So I've listed out some useful evidence and clues that I think you can try to look for in the content that may help to build a case. So, for example, it's very crucial to try to identify the country, even better, the city of where the abuse is happening, so you know who to reach out to for help and who to report it to. But this too, I know it can be extremely difficult. Sometimes the post may be seen by friends or family of the creator. So there's still a chance that the person's name, workplace, or school can be found. And these are all very helpful information if you can get it. You can also try to look for clues in the video or photo. For example, the language that's spoken in the video, or if there are any words written down in the video. We've had success looking, finding license plate numbers in videos, and the pictures on my slide. This is a postage stamp on a box that we found in the corner of a live stream video that allowed us to determine that the abuse was actually happening in China and not Taiwan, because they use simplified characters whereas we use traditional Chinese characters. And also you can try to look for clues in the person's friends list. They may be tagged, in other content that may show their location or provide you with some other information. Also try looking in the comments section for, some peculiar comments. Sometimes the perpetrator will pretend to be someone else and leave comments to try to get reaction from people. And I have a case example in a bit I can share with you. And finally, you can also look for other public posts the person may have shared across other platforms. There may be clues there as well. Okay, so next, I'm going to share with you 3 case examples from here in Taiwan. And just a warning, there are some graphic images, not that many, but just be aware. Okay, next. Okay, so this case example 1, so this was a case where hamsters were being severely abused, thrown in hot oil. So there was this person who was leaving really hateful comments on a rodent rescue group's YouTube channel. So this person was leaving really negative comments on every video. And so people started like noticing this person and clicking into this person's profile. It linked to their YouTube channel where these videos were uploaded. And actually on the channel, the perpetrator actually left an address and a line ID in the About section, but they were fake. I think he was just getting a kick out of it, trying to, leaving fake information. And then a lot of people online and even a news outlet reported on this. And this was also reported to the government animal protection authorities and the police. And we actually reported to the authorities as well. They actually told us that they think the case won't go very far because Meta does not provide information to law enforcement, but they were still willing to try to report it to the police. But after reporting it, we received no updates at all. The channel was taken down very quickly after the news media reported on it. It's good that the content was deleted, and probably because the person feared repercussions. However, of course, we want to try to catch this person to prevent more animals from being harmed. But it seems that even the police have a very hard time dealing with social media companies. And something interesting also to note from this case, the person uploading the content. So like I said before, he or she was really leaving many comments, on different videos, trying to get people's attention. And, they want people to take notice of them. So that's why SMAC suggests that, not to engage with these type of content, not to share, not to leave comments, not to click like. And the next case example was a case from 2020. So this is another example of where the person who owns this page is thriving on all the attention that he's getting. So people were leaving like angry emojis and negative comments and sharing the post. So you can see almost 2,000 people clicked the angry emoji. So this was a case where this person was posting very suggestive photos of animal abuse and, leaving comments, poking fun, trying to be funny. And actually this photo of the Chihuahua that you see on here, this photo was actually stolen from someone else's page. So the owner actually came across this and she was very, very angry and started leaving comments, on this post. And then in the comment section, you can see that someone was replying to this owner and very actively replying as well. And turns out he was the owner of this page and he was using a different account name to interact with people. And then the good thing is someone else in the comment section, it's kind of confusing, but someone else in the comment section ratted him out and gave out his full name. So the Chihuahua's owner was able to identify this person, find where he went to school, his high school, got in touch with the school, got in touch with this person, but of course, he denied it. And after that, the page was quickly deleted. But then a new page popped up. So he started another page and then using the same photos. So we helped by reporting this to the police as well. And we've actually even wrote an official letter from the Taiwan SPCA to the Ministry of Agriculture. But they couldn't do anything. So this case went as far as it did, only because someone stood up and like his friend knew him, stood up, let us know who this person was. But yeah, it was still very hard for even the government to do anything about this. Next, my final case example, a bit more successful. So this was a case, a recent case from this year. This was reported to us by a fellow SMAC member, Action for Primates. So they suspected that the woman who was uploading these videos of macaque torture is Taiwanese. So she had been posting these videos in a private group on Facebook. And though there was not much information about this lady online, we were able to find who her husband was, what he did for work. We found places he's performed at. He's a DJ. And then we collected all this information. We gave all this information to the police. And we also got a macaque expert to look at these videos. And she could tell that there were several species of macaques featured in all these different videos and a lot of baby macaques. But none of them had Formosan rock macaques, which are Taiwanese native species. So it was likely that these videos were not taken here in Taiwan. But it's still illegal to be sharing this type of content. So when we reported the case, we still asked the police to investigate whether or not she was the one causing the harm. And what I did was I also got someone from a political party here to make a call to the Central Police Agency to ask about this case, because we were afraid that the police would not take this seriously as they should. And this is from past experiences. So I made this report about 3 months ago, and I just got notice from the district prosecutor's office last week that they have found a woman. She admitted to the crime of sharing abuse content. So at least a number of 26 videos were found. However, the prosecutor decided to settle with a deferred prosecution agreement with 1 year probation and a fine of 30,000 Taiwanese dollars, which is only about $1,000 US. So deferred prosecution means that, yes, by legal means, what she did was illegal. However, prosecutors can make this decision not to prosecute, provided that the person meets certain specified conditions. So she has to pay a fine and she's on probation for 1 year. So with this case, even though the person was found, she was not charged with anything, which is very frustrating, of course. So, I mean, it's still very challenging to actually get police or prosecutors to take these forms of cases as more seriously. And we're still trying to change legislation and also maybe try to increase these fines. Next, so my final slide is a summary. Asila, you can just, keep, maybe, thank you. So one, don't give content creators what they want. So again, don't comment, don't share, don't like, don't engage. So with my 2 case examples, it really, they thrive on all the engagement. Report to these platforms. I know sometimes you may not see these posts taken down very quickly, but please still report it because these platforms need to know how serious the issue is. And third, provide information, if you can, that may lead to the arrest of the perpetrators. So if you can find anything at all, these are all very important information. And next, one more, I think 2 more. And at SMAC, we're trying to lobby social media companies, asking them to improve their policies, improve their technology. It's not easy, but we're working hard. And also change legislation, which I think is crucial. So I think that we need to have laws in place to require platforms to cooperate with law enforcement and making it legal obligation for them to do so, so we can catch these people quicker and easier and more effectively. Yeah, next. Thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Connie. Yeah, there was some difficult things in there, but just so important to show the process of investigations and some of the challenges that you've faced at Taiwan SPCA. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so I'm now going to pass on to Fouquet.
Hi, I'm here. I'll
Brilliant.
start sharing.
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks for these very interesting presentations. I think my presentation really follows on to what you guys have been doing and look at this content and try to identify the perpetrators. So I work for an organization called Bellingcat. We are journalists, but we're also an NGO. We're not a company. And to explain our work, I usually start with a little exercise. And that is asking people to look at this picture and then try to figure out for themselves, do you know where this is, right? Could you figure out where this is based purely on this photo? And as you can see, there's not much there, right? But this is a question that we at Bellingcat very often deal with, like trying to figure out where photos were taken. Now, why would you want to know where this photo was taken? This photo came from a series of child abuse images online. And we found the location, actually, because in a photo, there's always more information than people realize. In this case, stuff like something that looks like a boat, the mangroves, even something as small as a little rock that it casts a shadow by the sun's direction can be used to identify the location eventually. It takes some work, but we can do it at Bellingcat, and we've become very adept at trying to develop methodologies to do these kinds of investigations. So what we do is we try to develop these methodologies and then write guides, stories, articles, and teach these methodologies to as many people as possible. That is basically why we exist and what we do the entire time. So we investigate, and then we train people how to do these investigations. All for, we publish our guides for free, and we sustain ourselves through paid trainings and donations. And that leads to a lot of stories. Some of them have been groundbreaking in terms of conflict stories. So we do a lot of work in Ukraine, with Gaza right now, and with police violence. And of course, that's why I'm here. We're also moving into trying to identify the perpetrators of online animal abuse. So this started with a photo I came across simply by scrolling Instagram a couple of years back. This man, Memphis Depay, he is a Dutch soccer player. He posed with a lion cub in his house in Dubai. And people in the Netherlands were angry about this, but Memphis said, well, this little lion cub came from a zoo. So, it's all fine. And I was wondering what kind of zoo hands out a lion cub to a random celebrity to take home, right? So that's where this interest started. And I simply began by searching YouTube for Dubai tiger lion. Quickly came across celebrities like this one, Movlogs. He has 10 million subscribers. Nowadays, probably more. And he uploads content using, baby tigers, baby lions. And he thanked a account, NBE777. And obviously, looking for this tag, right? That's what you do. I came across all these celebrities in Dubai who were have millions of followers and who would tag this account again and again. And if you look closely, you'll find that it also continuously is the same kind of tiger or animal that was being passed around, taken away for photo shoots and these social media influencer content videos. And so in this case, I'm using the stripes on the forehead, but you can use all kinds of details, obviously, to track this tiger cub. And so the MBE777 account was actually set to private, despite being tagged by all these celebrities. So we use fake accounts to do these kind of investigations. I requested to follow him. And then we saw this. Basically, it's like a store window where you have all these young animals, lots of different tiger cubs, lion cubs, also cheetah cubs, in what you could only see indoor rooms, right? So these tiles, this particular couch thing, and there were no names, no faces, not any voices, but people were commenting, asking for how much. So there was definitely indications that he was just selling these animals. And by going through the people he was engaging with online, like the people who followed his account there, I came across a woman who was also posting the same kind of couch and animals. And she was a bit less careful, and she posted a view from a window. And later on, when I found different accounts from her, I saw an even better view from the window. And then on the right here, you see how we can identify the location, right? So by seeing these features that she sees from the window, we can easily figure out, oh, you are in this apartment building, quite high up at like the 13th floor. And that's where you keep all these tiger and lion cubs and cheetah cubs over the span of 2 years, like dozens of these animals. And we want to pin a face on this person, right? So again, going back to all this content and going through them, at some point you will find that for tiny moments in the videos that tagged MBE777, you could sometimes see these two faces. And the more we looked into it, the more we realized those are the people who are behind this account, MBE777. And the man on the right is called Safari Dubai. He's still posting. And by looking through Safari Dubai's account, the guy dressed in white, we found that he had this sort of private zoo, is what they call it in Dubai. Basically a large garden with a lot of exotic animals, wild animals in there. And on his profile, he was simply showing them and telling them how much he was taking care of them. But I found his phone number, and searching for that phone number, we also found advertisements where he was anonymously trying to sell the same animals he was saying that he was just raising at his private zoo. So he was definitely also dealing in animals, apart from also providing them to influencers. And moreover, he also had a lion at his home. And by comparing details of that lion, I eventually came back to the picture that started this sort of investigation, because this lion is a more adult version of the same lion cub that the celebrity had in his home. So another example of him renting out or his lion. And we do this by comparing, for example, the whisker spots. And this is just one short case study of investigating this online content, right? And it's a relatively shallow example of what we do. So in this case, we only use YouTube, Instagram, Google, and Google Maps. And we start from a post and we figure out eventually the faces, the names, the addresses of these people who are behind this content. But this can go quite complex in terms of our methodology, because we can also use, for example, facial recognition technology, where we upload a photo of someone's face and search the entire web for wherever this face might appear else, maybe different photos or social media accounts under a different name. We also have the ability now to task satellites to take photos for us, in case we want to, get a better view of an area or a house somewhere remotely. And all of this information we try to use to uncover eventually the real perpetrators of online animal abuse. And so this process, what we do, where we look very closely at an environment, details in an environment, to figure out where it actually is on Earth. We call that geolocation, and that's where we train people in, and what we do ourselves the entire time. Like I said, usually for conflict areas and human rights violations, but now also for animal abuse. Meaning, even if you have footage that even has small details, and you're desperate to find out where it is somewhere on the planet, even if you don't know the country, we can try and find the location, and oftentimes we're able to find the location if we have enough time to do our investigations. And then in this case, we also use pattern matching. So in this case, for the tiger cubs, left is a screen grab of an influencer video where these tiger cubs were being used and played around with. And on the right is content from a zoo in Dubai. And both of them never acknowledge each other. Like, the influencer won't say, we got this tiger cub from the zoo. The zoo will never say, we hand this tiger cub out of the zoo to influencers to do whatever they want with them. But by looking very closely at details, we can see that it's the same animal that's being passed around. So just a very short case study. And this is what we call open source investigations, because we only use basically tools that are available on the internet. In theory, if you have an internet connection and you read our stories or our guides, you should be able to do the same, right? You should be able to follow along and do this investigation on your own. And what we find is that this really attracts a lot of people who want to help us, volunteers. So we have, for example, a Discord community that has right now about 30,000 people in it. And they're mostly talking about conflict because that's where we started out. But we're also trying to build up the animal welfare bit of that network. And we train and help people to do these investigations on their own. And what we see is that the more people we involve, the larger our capacity becomes to investigate all of these different stories, because there's so much content out there, right? And just to go back to that earlier investigation, the case study that I showed you, after publishing the story, this secretive account deleted his Instagram account, which has like tens of thousands of followers. So there is some effect to it, even in the United Emirates, where it's difficult to get the police to go after people who might do wrong from our perspective. So yeah, that's basically what we try to do, what I'm trying to do. And I would love to connect with anyone who's willing to share methodologies or know content, places of content that really need some investigation done. And like I said, the aim is for me to expand our knowledge of what's going on, and also the methodology on how we can investigate this and share this as broadly and widely as we can in order to help stop this kind of content. So that's very shortly what I try to do and what we try to do at Bellingcat. And I'm happy to take any of your questions.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That was super interesting. Even, knowing exactly how you do these things, having read it already, it's really great to see that in a presentation. I'm sure people will be just fascinated by some of the techniques that you've mentioned there. Yes, brilliant. Okay, thank you. We're now going to move on to the Q&A section of our session. So that will be me, Fouquet, and Connie, please. Okay. Brilliant. So we've had some questions coming in. I'm going to start with one for Connie. But let's do this as much of a chat as we can. So, if Fouquet, at any point you'd want to jump in with something, let's do that. It's a nicer vibe. So, the question from a participant was, when do you think you are in the phase of, yes, we can move forward with this online cruelty case to real investigation? So I'm imagining what the question is, how do you know that you've got enough information that it's worth pursuing an investigation? And this is actually really important for SMAC when we are doing that assessment of information of like, do we think there's enough here that an NGO would be able to move forward?
Yeah. I think the first thing, the most important to begin with, is we have to know where it's happening. So, which country? So we've gotten reports in the past where people thought it was happening in Taiwan, but we did some digging and it was not. There are other situations where like we don't know where it's happening. So if we don't have the location, very difficult, can't do anything. It's best if we can get the city, because in Taiwan, we have different animal authorities in different cities. We have tried, just by knowing that it's happening in Taiwan without the city, we've tried reporting the case, but law enforcement will always tell us, well, can you give us the city? Which city? It's a lot of times we just don't have that information, so the case stops there. It is best if we can get a full name. That's very, very difficult as well. So with these successful ones that we were able to pursue, we were able to find the name of the person and where they work or the school they went to. If we don't have that information, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to the things that we were saying in my part of the presentation, is that is something that we find as well, how we gauge what is actually useful, because all the information that we receive is really useful for SMAC's wider work, but in terms of investigation, has it got the detail? Because we're aware of not wanting to pass that on to an NGO who then is like, we'd love to go into this further, but this is going to require a lot of work on our part to even see if we can find out who this person might be, or where they're located, for example. So,
yeah, just to add to that, like, I think the most difficult again is with Meta, because with other platforms here in Taiwan, authorities have told us as long as you can get the city, the location, they can still try to ask the social media platforms to provide information. But with Meta, it's impossible. So that's why we're trying to push legislation at this point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Which goes back to that sort of bigger picture part of, the issue. We need all those different elements to be able to increase the success of doing investigations. But Fouquet, some of the things that you mentioned in your talk, again, I was minded of the fact that often NGOs and even within SMAC, we do not have the skills or the expertise in the team of some of the tactics that you mentioned that might aid in our work. And I think that's something that NGOs have said to us. This is all fairly new, particularly coming into the animal welfare world. So yeah, I wondered if you had anything to say on that.
No, that's I've identified that gap as well, and the strange thing is that it doesn't have to be, because none of the things I've done were very difficult. It's just that you need to know, for example, how to find the right information from a Facebook account without having to go through Meta, right? There are ways, or finding the exact location from a photo. If you learn these techniques, you can become very skilled at it. And the thing is that we've done this a lot for, like I said, conflict and human rights newsrooms. So, for example, there are several former Bellingcat employees who now work at the New York Times, and they do great work there, doing similar kind of work that we did at Bellingcat. But it's just that there's not enough overlap yet between what the methodologies that are already widespread in sort of the conflict and human rights reporting compared to the animal welfare investigations. And I see a lot of potential to do some crossover, cross-pollination, and share these techniques. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there would be great demand for that, for sure. So I'm really pleased that we can start bringing those connections through this session. This leads on to a nice question, actually, for you, Fouquet. In an online world where we can almost access all information, how do we navigate between doing ethical and safe investigation and not doing something that might be dangerous or privacy violation or potentially illegal in some countries?
Yeah, that really depends on the subject matter, and especially also the country you live in, right? So what we do is we do make fake accounts, we join private groups, but we never talk to people at all. Because for us journalists, that would be crossing a ethical line where you pretend to be someone else you're not. So for us, that's a line, but that's not a law per se, right? If you are devoted to catching those perpetrators and you're not a journalist, then you might pretend to be someone. So it all depends on how far you are willing to go. And the same goes for accessing content. Some people, for example, I do find it difficult to see animals get tortured, for example. And I know that if I'm entering this area, I have a lot of methods that I can use. So I turn my screen to grayscale, gray colors. I turn audio off. I keep my hand in front of the screen for the parts I don't want to see. There are all these ways that you can help alleviate the potential injury, whether it's mentally or legally. But it really depends on the person who's doing the investigation and how comfortable you're willing to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's a point of conversation that we always end up with when sort of moving into that element of mental health and looking after yourself, because investigating things like this for anybody, no matter what level you're at, someone who's seen it online up to an NGO really going into deep investigation, this stuff is not nice. So at SMAC we do say things like don't have the sound on when you're watching these videos, but yeah, the grayscale suggestion is also really great. Just anything to sort of dampen how the intensity of what you're seeing.
Yep. And this is also part of the guides and resources that we try to draft. We've actually written a guide for dealing with traumatic imagery footage, and when you want to do these kind of investigations. And also we obviously warn a lot of people that want to help, that volunteer, about the potential images that they might see, because yeah, okay. Now I saw the question. Can people contribute voluntarily in Bellingcat to exposing this kind of crime? And what is the risk and mitigation for this action, which sort of follows on this question? Yes, people voluntarily contribute a lot in our Discord. Sometimes they even end up publishing and then getting a career in from their voluntary actions, which is very cool. And we help them along with their investigations as well. But there's also risk. The risks that we just described that you mentioned, Nicola, harmful imagery. Also, you have to be careful not to leave your own digital footprints to your own personal accounts and IP address or actual home. You always have to be careful with that. We also try to train our volunteers in that. So there's both risks and rewards for volunteering, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, great. We have put a link to your website somewhere in the chat. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Amanda's put a new one. Okay, so a question for Connie. What do you think is the best way to push the government and in law enforcement to take animal cruelty seriously online? That's a pretty big question, I guess, but
yeah. Again, I think if it's in the law, they will take it seriously. And also there have been situations where, for example, if a case goes viral or if a lot of people's talking about it, I know it's kind of contradictory to what we're trying to educate at SMAC, right? Like don't engage, don't share it, don't comment. But in certain situations, if the case gets a lot of publicity, usually authorities here or police here, what I would say is try harder to try to catch the perpetrators. So yeah, I think there's a fine line. Like I know some people share the content. If you share the content with the goal of trying to get more information, asking people, do you know this person, or can anybody provide more information? I think in certain situations that can help, but I think that people still have to be responsible in doing so. For example, if you're sharing something with the aim of trying to get more information, you should at least tell people, hey, don't engage with the original content. Educate them. Don't click emojis, don't comment. But if you have information, do a private message or in that way, I think, be responsible if you're trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there is I think there's a very clear difference between you having to engage with the content in some ways to be able to do the research or the investigation. Like SMAC does have to look at the videos, and our volunteers do as well. But we have guidelines around how to limit that interaction, and also try to control that interaction in a way in that it's hopefully only being done by a very limited number of people to be able to get the information that they need for the research and the investigation itself. So I think, yeah, that is a really good point. Like, doesn't say that changes our advice at all. It's really important that people follow that. That is informed by our knowledge of how social media works and what makes the content more popular and basically exacerbates the problem, as you've shown in some of your cases. But yeah, I did see that there was a comment earlier similarly about in Indonesia that sort of virality of content can get the attention of lawmakers. So maybe it's that we need to find other ways of making the content viral, if you like, in the sense that rather than it just being shared a lot on social media, that we can bring something like that to the press where appropriate, and maybe make a point of it that, but the focus being on the platforms haven't done anything about it, and it shouldn't have been on the platform. So the focus is there rather than it's still getting big attention, but it's not necessarily means that it's being shared all over social media. Hope they can share our story would be, the best, the ideal scenario. But yes, I think something else that I wanted to add there was in the UK, we have successfully lobbied for animal cruelty content to be included in a new Online Safety Act that was designed to protect users online from harmful content. And initially, animal content wasn't included in that. But SMAC and a whole range of organizations came together and did lobby for that. And it was included because the focus was on the harm to the viewer, and in particular, children and vulnerable people. So it was that element that got the government interested. And of course, there was a big on investigation as well alongside that, where into the monkey torture, which didn't require the content to go viral, but it was still big public ways of getting their attention, of one, the severity of what was in that investigation, but then two, the fact that could have that link to harming viewers. So utilizing the sort of human side of it as well as the animal cruelty.
Yeah. I mean, here, when I was trying to lobby legislators, a lot of them didn't know about this issue. So just by showing them, explaining to them the severity of these cases, a lot of them are automatically, they're like, oh, this is horrible, we need to change the law. So I think if you're trying to, maybe other NGOs trying to lobby, just make visits to these legislators, explain to them what's happening and the challenges that we're facing now. And you'd be surprised, a lot of them would be willing to back up a bill or be supportive with this issue. It's just a lot of them don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and we find that across the board with knowledge around this cruelty content online. A lot of people don't realize that it's a problem. Okay, so another question was, how do trends set by celebrities and influencers affect the demand for exotic pets and the broader issue of animals exploitation online?
I know from my research that talking to experts who study this is that there is a significant effect of people posing with wild animals, and then other people seeing that content and thinking, oh, if I want to be popular or successful, I should also get involved with that, or copycat behavior where another influencer sees that content and thinks, oh, I also want that many likes. Let's get a tiger or a lion cub to pose with. So there is definitely a sort of like an oil spill effect where one person can start this and then everybody starts sort of copycat behavior. Yeah, and gets involved in a similar kind of abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there have been some studies focus on particular species which haven't necessarily looked directly at influencers, but have looked at content showing particular species as pets, and then looking at the sentiment in the comments, with people sort of saying, wow, where do I get one? I want one as a pet, and maybe being introduced to animals, wild animals that they've never considered as a pet before.
Mm-hmm.
And it is something that we covered in one of our reports, and I think again really highlights that link between content just showing wild animals as pets and then the trade itself.
Yeah, and especially again, just from this case study, I know that the trade in cheetah cubs is driven significantly by the fact that influencers like to pose with cheetahs and cheetah cubs. Yeah, so the poaching starts like in the Horn of Africa, and then they get smuggled into the Middle East for these stupid Instagram posts.
Yeah. Okay, a specific question to do with your example, Fouquet, is someone asked if the perpetrators in Dubai were reported to local authorities.
Yeah, so for the first story on them, I got in touch with a local NGO, and they filed a thing to the local authorities. But at the same time, the bar for expectations was very low, right? Because we're dealing with wealthy and influential people, and the culture in terms of how to treat animals and this thing about private zoos is also very different than we are accustomed to. So not much happened, but a report was made. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So we've had a question here in the chat. Is there SMAC educational content people can share themselves to help educate others rather than sharing the actual videos? That is a great suggestion. We do have a range of videos called Ask Yourself. And in these, they're small videos that don't use any actual cruelty footage, but they are covering different forms of cruelty content that you might expect. So primates, for example, elephants, fake rescue, and they give examples of what you might see and gives some pointers around, questions basically around, does the animal, if it's a young infant animal, are they with their mothers? Why not? Are they in an environment that you would expect to find that animal? And so they're just questions to sort of get people thinking about what it is they're actually seeing in content online. So yeah, Amanda's put a link to that as well in the chat. But Connie mentioned there is a whole range of resources, and also for NGOs to use as well. We launched an NGO toolkit earlier this year, which has got lots of videos, social media images, frequently asked questions that, to help NGOs be able to do some advocacy on this issue as well. Okay, we did have a question. Is it recommended for the public to do their own investigations with the help of open source technology? And how far is the reach of the information that we can gather with this?
Yeah. I mean, depends on it all depends on the investigation, really. You can get really far using just what's out there without any, specific fancy paid tools, if you devote yourself to it, for sure. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
How far can you go with it? Is the main point of the question.
Yeah, no, so pretty far is the answer, definitely, all the way up to finding a person's name and address, or uncovering an entire network.
And what would you say is the sort of, it might be hard to answer, but in terms of like a time, how long do these things take?
So you become better at identifying details over time, right? So for example, if you show me a picture of a room, I'll in my head I'm already looking for like specific sockets on the wall to identify the country, or small detail stickers maybe somewhere on a closet that could show me a city or a football club. So it's very difficult to estimate. It also depends, if I'm trying to do an investigation in Indonesia, it will take me longer than in the Netherlands, because it's a different context. But if I work with an Indonesian volunteer, then they might very quickly spot certain details that are very specific to a certain region, or so it's very difficult to say. Like, I've spent months looking at a single doorknob for but also I've uncovered networks in like a couple of hours. So yeah.
Interesting. Someone said some clever things. Looking at the plug socket, I would never think about that, so that's really interesting. Okay, I think we're about to wrap up. So just if there's any final points, Connie, if there's anything you want to add or say, and Fuke as well, before we finish.
I mean, I think SMAC's website has a lot of useful information for people to, be educated about. Like I said, I think a lot of cases that people are like, they would think that it's animal cruelty if there's physical abuse, but there are also other types of cruelty and abuse that's happening that's not so obvious. So wild animals as pets, or teasing of animals, or fake rescues. I think the more people are educated on it, the more helpful it will be, to try to flag these content, or to try to catch these people. So yeah, I encourage everyone to go on SMAC's website.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just love to get in touch with people. And if you come across very egregious content that you want someone else to have a look at to see if I can help, feel free to share. I'm always open for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both so much for that. It was a fantastic session. And yeah, if you've got any more questions for our speakers, please feel free to email SMAC, and we can pass those on. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Ursula.
Thank you, Nicola.
Yes, just to repeat what I said in my section of the talk, we do have this survey. It's super quick, just to give you your experience of animal cruelty content on social media. So if you can just scan the QR code, or we can put the link in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you for sharing that. And that was indeed a very insightful and had a lot of information as well for that session. So round of applause to everyone. You all can use the clapping emoji. Yay! Right. So we would like to take this opportunity to share with you our upcoming AfA Connect event that is slated for this year. The fourth and last AfA Connect for this year is happening on the 12th to 13th November 2024. Registration for AfA Connect 4 will be open soon. So for more information, please log on to asiaforanimals.com/connect. We have several in-person events happening as well. We have the Asia from Animal Day happening in Hanoi from October 9 to 11. And The Farm Animal Coalition will be having their third regional event soon in India, and the date is to be confirmed. Many more exciting projects and other events coming in 2025. We have the Asia for Animals Conference Taipei 2025 happening from August 25th to 29th at Taipei, Taiwan. So if you'd like to know more about our events, please head to asiaforanimals.com/events. And if you like, you can subscribe to our mailing list to get the latest information about our events. The AfA podcast. Did you know that we have launched the AfA podcast this year? Yes, we did. And I highly recommend that you give it a listen. The episodes released so far are excellent, featuring guest speakers from all around the globe who share their experiences and updates. So activate your hearing buds at asiaforanimals.com/podcast.